I found this article by John Perkins that kind of gives a literal overview of the history of mankind and how the takeover has become so pervasive here. But now John Perkins is the fellow that wrote Diary of an Economic Hitman, which is very kind of a classic information about how the corporations take over the resources of smaller countries, how they go about it. This is like one of his latest newsletters. He puts out a newsletter every month. I just thought it'd be kind of good to read a couple paragraphs here, and it kind of depicts how the takeover and how through history, how they've managed to do what they've done, and how people are so, basically conditioned into accepting and agreeing to it.
Yeah, sure, Val. That sounds great.
Okay, for at least 3,000 of the 200,000 years that humans, as we know ourselves, have existed, we've developed civilizations based on the exploitation of other people and nature. We've moved from the hunters-gatherers through the agrarian and industrial revolutions and into the current technology information age. Yet for these past 3 millennia, we've continued to build our socioeconomic political structures around hierarchies. What we have today is a direct descendant of the classical empires: China, Persia, Greece, Rome, medieval fiefdoms, European colonizers of Africa, America, Asia, and the Middle East, slave-owning plantation systems in the 19th century factories where women and children worked under horrible conditions. People employed today by short-term profit-driven corporations may live less squalid lives than the slaves, serfs, and indentured workers of former times, but they too are subject to the greed-driven, often brutal policies of their corporate masters. They are bought and sold in labor markets, sent off to fight wars that profit big business, and paid wages that are hundreds of times lower than those of their bosses. Billions of people around the world labor long, hard hours, often under insufferable conditions, for wages that are insufficient to support their families and their own retirements. Meanwhile, fortunes that boggle the imagination are piled into the treasure chests of a handful of billionaires, the latest edition of global potentates. We can marvel at the greed of kings who banqueted in splendid castles while their subjects toiled and starved in the ghettos outside. We may ask ourselves, how do those kings could justify such opulence in the midst of so much misery? And yet, all we need to do is drive past the grandiose mansions, mega yachts that are longer than football fields, or private luxury jets of the current barons to ask ourselves similar questions. What do the Koch brothers do with their $100 billion other than hire economic hitmen to make sure they pay no taxes while enjoying the infrastructure and services financed by the U.S. taxpayers? How many environments and lives have been destroyed by the oil refineries, pipelines, cattle ranches, chemical plastics, fertilizer, and other businesses owned by the Koch industries? What percentage of Jeff Bezos' $160 billion has been earned by the ruthless tactics of Amazon? Tactics that have wiped out competitors, including thousands of mom-and-pop businesses around the world. How closely tied is Mark Zuckerberg's $55 billion to Facebook's relationship with Russian trolls, Cambridge Analytica, and the harvesting of personal data of millions of people without their consent? How does America's richest family live with itself when it knows that U.S. taxpayers buy food stamps and Medicaid for half its employees, adding approximately $6 billion a year to the coffers of the Walmart kingdom? Yet the good news is that we are fortunate to know these things, to be able to ask these and so many more questions. We have access to information that inspires, encourages, and motivates us to change. We are not shackled in chains of silence. We have the ability to turn things around, to transform a system that is failing into one that will support us and our children and grandchildren. The long march of hierarchical history has led us to this moment of awareness, a true age of enlightenment. The earth herself speaks to us, warning that if we don't change, the consequences will be catastrophic, and already are catastrophic for billions of our brothers and sisters who somehow survive where wars, climate crisis, and failed economies have created seemingly unlivable conditions. The melting glaciers and polar ice, the rising oceans, the species extinctions, the hurricanes, fires, floods, tornadoes, and droughts, the desperation of people around the planet, the political discord, all of these are symptoms of a global social, economic, political system that is consuming itself into extinction, a death economy. Now, I just read this just to give kind of an overview of how these systems, these people, these reptilians, these controllers, they've managed to, throughout history, in one way or the other, maintain their control, in their financial control and control over people. And it just keeps going on. And now it's to the point where it's also, the environment is suffering, the planet's suffering, and it's just to the point where something new has to be taking place. So that's where we come in. We're very unique. We are establishing a new position. We're not trying to take down or change the existing system, but establish a new position, very unique. Nothing like this has been done before on the planet. So that's where, if anybody wants to join us in this endeavor, it's something that is of great value to the person himself and as well as the planet. And that's what the new presentation is about, basically. Is one of the aspects of it is establishing self-sufficient communities and a new position totally from what these others have created, which is not at all a good benefit for anybody.
Yeah, thanks, Val. That's about a lot of the stuff we're seeing if we're paying attention to what's going on right here in front of us on Earth. It's I've got a bunch of notes and things from group Skype meetings with Dwayne, that things he's said, and we've all been bowing and kneeling to these authorities, these presidents and these kings and dictators and the wealthiest humans that seem to have so much power, and they seem to be awful ruthless and brutal. It's like they're important to themselves, and everybody else isn't important, or hardly. It's been going on, it seems like, a long time on Earth, with all the wars that have been created and from these religions. And it sounds like fear comes from religious ideas. And you have to have the courage to get through these religions. And there were experiences, and take what you got from them and try something new, because they've kind of created the situation how it is on Earth right now. That's looking pretty bad for the air and the water and the food, and the extermination of a lot of the population, and it seems to be in process by their guidance to others, or their rules, or ability to control certain other beings that do what they say or want done. One of the notes I took was, here's the idea, the isness being everything. It's who really wants to see it, who wants to discover what life is. If a person really wants to and is being offered this opportunity, is why we're sharing this information or these references, to find out how to get out of this psych realm stuff, this planet Earth, this rock world, where all this hell's going on right in front of everybody. That's with this modern technology of, you can see the wars, and you can see the starvation, and you can see the forests or the fires that destroy people's lives and our homes, and these vaccines and all kinds of things that are going on that seem to be out of our control. So if a person doesn't want to come back and reincarnate in another life here, if it's to the point where they're wanting to not have to return to the psych realms and find out that there's a lot better, I don't know if you call it experience or a lot better life in a place called the real universes, where there isn't all this stuff that's going on here in this place in the psych realms. So you have to test it for yourself, find out for yourself, and see what life shows you. Unless you're one of those that still thinks everything is fine the way it is, and that's just how it is, and they're not. If you're not aware that there could be something a whole lot better than this experience that we're going through, or this process that we're in to find out what isn't real, compared to have a comparison to what is real. Oh, it's kind of, I guess, subtle stuff that a person has to find out for themselves, what's true and real. And if a person's just thinking about themselves and how long they can live here, and where are you really getting? Just gonna get old and leave the body again. If that's what makes sense to you, that there's only this life and there isn't anything beyond it, and if you're not interested in finding out if there is or not, then that's your choice. So, we're trying to share something to help everybody become more aware of what's really going on Earth and what life is all about. Because we can all see what's taking place on Earth if we spend a little of our time paying attention to the information that's being provided now with all this technology, we can find out so many things about vaccines and about the chemtrails and about the fluoride in the water and on and on and on. And information about all this worldly stuff. But the real treasure seems to be to find out how to earn your way out of this psychic realm, so you don't have to go through this suffering experiences anymore. So if a person is willing to try the New You session, singing New You, and to get a real connection to real guidance and a real education, and find out for themselves, let life show you what's real. Does anyone have anything they'd like to mention or talk about?
Well, again, it's I just want to bring up what I did in another show about how things are manipulated, portrayed, how this reality is so that why people don't see this, what we're presenting. How come they don't see it? What is going on here? Since it's right in front of their face. And I know I was there a few years ago. I was in a position where, I didn't see what I see now. So there's a certain change or a certain turn somebody has to do to see this. But I want to mention again how this former KGB fellow that came out and talked about how they manipulate people's reality, and how through social engineering, basically that was part of his spy work. It wasn't the James Bond type. It was much as a psychological aspect of turning people or manipulating people. And what he did was there's four aspects of it: is demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then naturalization or normalization, where the controllers come in and they basically take over and provide security, comfort, and safety. But they're actually the ones that created all the distress and crisis and destabilization and demoralization. So create the problem and create the solution idea. And that's what they've done, and they've done it very good. So people are just, they're outright brainwashed basically to this system, and how they've been led to believe things are the way they are, which are basically it's a one-dimensional view. It's just a very limited, very tunnel vision view of life. And basically they think what this is all there is to life, is this physical world. And we're here to show people that there's more to life, and life can be a lot better, and they can make better choices. And now they have a better choice. They have an opportunity to do something better for themselves and others through what we're providing here. And this is just very real. We're not political or social or religious or spiritual, any of these things, even metaphysical or philosophical. We're just very real with what's going on. We're just reporting what's going on. And like this KGB guy said, you can take a person right in front, you can take them to basically once they've been conditioned, take them to the jet plane that's spraying these things, and show them the nozzles and show them the chemical tanks inside, and they still won't believe it, because they still won't believe those are, well, they'll make an excuse, or something, they'll have some kind of reason to not believe it because they've been told otherwise, or the social consciousness is that where that's just a conspiracy theory. So they've done a good job with it, and that we can do better. Everybody can do better.